First, I told you about Arizona. Then I told you about Colorado. Now the state of Oregon says they have the most evictions they've seen since before the pandemic. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have another interesting article for you today, and this time it's coming out of a state that I have covered several times before. That's the state of Oregon. Now, Oregon is known as being one of those places where they treat landlords like absolute garbage, okay? They treat us like we don't have any property rights. And that's why I'm always talking about the state. They try to pass laws, rules, and regulations thinking it's going to fix their affordable housing problem, when the truth of the matter is the affordable housing problem is caused by the laws, rules, and regulations they have, okay? So Oregon is another one of these states that is facing record numbers of evictions. Okay, they were talking about they have more evictions being filed now than they had back in 2019 before the pandemic. Okay, so all states, I think all states throughout the country are seeing these high numbers of evictions, and it doesn't just have to do with the pandemic. A lot of it has to do with the weakness in the economy right now, the super high inflation. People are struggling to be able to pay their bills, not just their rent, but like the cost of food, the cost of just everything, utilities, groceries, gasoline. Like I think gas prices have gone down a little bit lately, but all the other expenses are still going up, including insurance costs, etc. So I think that when it comes down to it, if tenants are having a more difficult time paying their bills, we're going to see more evictions. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that, hey, landlords are out there, punishing tenants, or they're trying to go for a big money grab. No, that doesn't mean that at all, because we're facing the same exact increases in costs that everyone else is facing. Okay, and I have to mention this every single time because not everybody watches all my videos. Not everybody who sees this video has seen the other countless times where I've said that, hey, our insurance costs are going up, our property taxes are going up, the cost of maintenance on our buildings, how much we have to pay plumbers or electricians or even a handyman, those costs have all increased. And because those costs have increased, we have to raise our rents. If we don't raise our rents, we won't be able to pay our bills. Our buildings will either fall into disrepair or we'll lose them to the bank. And that's not what you want to see. You don't want to see that sort of thing where we have properties that are in disrepair, tenants living in horrible conditions because the landlords aren't able to pay their bills. But that's exactly what you're going to start seeing, especially in places like Oregon, where they have rent control in place. They have these super strong tenant protections where it is almost impossible to get rid of tenants who aren't even paying the rent. And we're just left there twiddling our thumbs while we slowly lose all of our money. And that is a very, very bad position to be in. That's why I say, if you have the choice, especially if you're a small mom and pop landlord, don't waste your time investing in Oregon. Okay? If you're a large landlord and you know how to play the system and you have huge amounts of emergency reserves, I still say consider investing elsewhere, but at least you have better odds in a place like Oregon, okay? So, this is a bad situation overall. Like I don't, like no landlord wants to have to evict their tenant, but we all know that the main reason why it happens is for non payment of rent. And if the tenants aren't paying rent, then we need to make sure that we're able to get our units back and then get them listed on the market again so that we do not suffer huge financial losses. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, you can leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Now, I asked you when I covered the story about Colorado having their highest number of evictions, but I'll ask you again. Do you believe that this is a nationwide trend? Okay, I mean, I don't have the information or the statistics to say that this is happening all over the country, but just from these anecdotal articles I'm reading in all in such a short period of time about like Phoenix, Arizona area, the Colorado state of Colorado, and now the state of Oregon are all facing record numbers of evictions. So it appears that different parts of the country are all having this same problem. So it's got to be something that's nationwide, at least in my opinion. Okay, but do you believe that this is a problem nationwide? And If you're living in an area where this isn't an issue, then put a comment down below. Let us know where you're at. But anyway, let's get into this article. This article is coming from the SalemReporter.com, and it says Oregon eviction filings above pre-pandemic levels. Advocates say more state aid needed. Yeah, so the tenant advocates, they believe the same thing that a lot of these garbage people believe, which is that, oh, we need more socialism. We need the government to take care of people and pay people's bills for them. No, okay? That is not a long term solution. The long term solution is not for the government to pay people's bills for them, because what we end up with is, as I've said before, more people dependent upon the government, and we don't want that. So let's get into the article. Landlords are filing more court evictions monthly than they did before the COVID pandemic, though the number of evictions trended down after the legislature passed a law giving tenants more time to make up late rent. That's according to a presentation lawmakers on the Senate Housing and Development Committee heard from the Oregon Law Center, which advocated for eviction protections. The group's legislative advocacy director, Sybil Hebb, warned lawmakers that the number of evictions may increase if the state doesn't provide more money for emergency rent assistance. The $88 million lawmakers set aside this spring is on pace to run out by next summer, with about a year left in the 2-year budget cycle. So they allocated $88 million for rent assistance, right? And that money is going to run out in just a year. Obviously, there was more demand for all this free money than than there was supply. So what are they going to do? They're going to go back and they're going to ask the government. And keep in mind, when I talk about the government and free money, there's no such thing as free money. We already know the money has to come from somewhere, and that money is coming from taxpayers, the people who actually are paying their taxes. They're the ones paying to house other people for free. Now, that seems like kind of a bad deal for a lot of the people who are hardworking. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pay all these thousands of dollars in taxes every year, and what's it going to go to? It's going to go because Bob down the street, he didn't pay his bills because he doesn't know financial education. He doesn't have any financial education, so instead of paying his rent on time, he went down to the casino and spent a whole bunch of his paycheck on gambling, right? But now the state of Oregon is going to step in there and pay Bob's rent for him. Now, don't you think that's a good way to spend taxpayer money? Because remember, these people are put into these financial situations by their own actions. So there very well could be the case of people who are spending money in dumb ways who are getting rental assistance. Just because a person is lower income does not mean that they are not making bad financial decisions and that they have the inability to pay their own bills. So, they could be sitting there drinking alcohol. They could be just shopping too much on Amazon. They could be smoking cigarettes, and instead of paying their bills. Or they could have just bought a car that was too expensive for them, and they're focused on making that car payment rather than paying their rent. Whatever the reason is, right? The true problem, the true root cause of people not being able to pay their rent isn't that they are low income. It's that they don't have the financial education. They don't know how to budget correctly in order to pay their bills. They don't know how to save in case they have an emergency. You know what I mean? And they don't know how to invest so that they have something going on into the future. So what we need to be working on is these people's financial education. It doesn't matter what their income is. It matters what their financial education is, because there are some people who are super low income who are basically in an excellent financial position. I remember a long time ago, I'd read a story about a person who was a janitor who, when they passed away, left their $8 million in savings and investments to charity. And I just thought to myself, how do you accumulate $8 million in a lifetime working as a janitor? And you read further into the story, you find out that the person lived below their means, and they stuck to a good budget, and they never had to worry about paying their bills on time. They never had to worry about eviction or any of this nonsense, right? So that's what we need to do. We need to teach financial education to people. We don't need to give them free money and then force them into being dependent upon the government. That is dumb. In 2019, Oregon landlords filed an average of about 1,560 eviction suits each month. A pandemic related eviction moratorium lasted through June of 2021, and tenants with pending applications for rent assistance were protected from eviction through June of 2022. And that's very misleading. Okay, it says that they had an eviction moratorium from June of 2021 until June of 2022, and we all know that tenants were protected from eviction for much longer than that. Okay, starting back in 2020, in March of 2020, they had I believe, the CDC or the federal eviction moratorium in place. And then when that finally looked like it was winding down, the states were and the local municipalities were putting in their own. And that's what they're talking about right there. So there were some landlords who were not able to get paid rent from their tenants for more than 2 years. Okay. So this is kind of a misleading little thing that they try to do to make it, oh, it was only in place, the eviction moratorium here was only in place for a year. I was like, yeah, but it wasn't the only eviction moratorium that was being in place, right? And they talk about different little measures that the state of Oregon actually had put into place to lower the number of evictions, because it was like a tsunami after this eviction moratorium ended. So they were like, oh, we got to slow this down, right? So they put in, different measures, giving tenants more time to be able to catch up their rent, etc. Right? But like I said, these measures they put in place did not solve the underlying problem. And the underlying problem, if it was solved, would mean that these tenants would have never had the evictions filed against them in the first place. So, I'm not a fan of, basically giving people free handouts. I'm just not. I believe that free handouts really they teach people the wrong lesson. You know they have bad behavior and then they get rewarded for it, and that's not the way that things should be. Okay. Meanwhile, the people with good behavior, the people who are paying all their bills on time, paying their taxes, they're taking their tax money and then giving them to these other people for free. So yeah, that's socialism for you right there.